people who share a passion or are passionate about something, it draws you in. And when we share the same passion, it's like, you know what? We just went from friends to bros. It's just like instant.
What's good, guys? As I usually do on my channel.
Meet my friend and fellow YouTuber, Oleg Nikitin, the man behind the camera and tech gear review channel, NoLimitsON.
No matter if you are a beginner or a pro, shoot on a smartphone or a camera, want to learn new things or get better at what you already know, there is no limits.
We recently met at Kasti Podcast Studio in Moscow's trendy art play district to talk about his life, his YouTube channels, and oh yes, something we're both passionate about, cameras. Join us for this amazing conversation with Oleg from NoLimitsON.
My bro.
My bro.
3, 2, 1.
Here we go!
My honored guest today is Oleg Nikitin, who is a fellow YouTuber. And do you do podcasting?
A little bit.
A little bit of podcasting as well, but he's got an amazing YouTube channel called
NoLimitsON.
NoLimitsON. And tell us about the channel. What is it about? I know what it's about, but I want to hear you say it.
What's good, guys? As I usually do on my channel. So my channel is basically related to all the kind of tech and gear related to videography, because I'm a professional videographer for like 13 years. And it's my passion, and that is why I'm doing three YouTube channels. 2 of those are about tech, one in Russian, one in English, and the third one is also in Russian, but it's like a dissection of Eminem's songs.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's called Приятный английский, which means nice English, if you will. Mm-hmm. So I just dissect different lyrics, different like double entendres, etc. I really adore listening to hip hop, and it's almost made me talk okay in English. So that is why I'm really thankful and respectful to Eminem himself. We were born in the same day, 20 years apart, 17th of October. And that's kind of my homage to him. I'm paying homage and doing some stuff for the Russian-speaking people to increase their knowledge of English.
That's amazing. That is awesome. I found your channel when I was looking for a review, and I can't remember for what, because I'm always on the review channels. And of course, there are marquee reviewers in the West. And suddenly your channel popped up. And of course, for my Western audience that's watching this, we are in Moscow, Russia. You are watching the Moscow Photographer channel. And so to find a gear channel that was in English, but from a native Russian, was incredible. It was an incredible find. I was like, what? Oleg Nikitin? Who is this guy? So how did you become interested in photography and videography?
Well, it's been a while because I was interested when I was, I guess, like 7 or 8 years old. My dad had a Panasonic VHS camera, and he recorded basically my childhood throughout many years. Mm-hmm. And I enjoyed watching those pieces of little like pieces from this event. We go to visit some friends or relatives, and he always recorded something, and I was really curious, and I enjoyed looking in the viewfinder, with the huge eyepiece right here. My eye was like this big, and the eyepiece was like this big. This kind of ignited a little spark in me And then we started to film a lot of stuff with our cell phones. Do you remember Sony Ericsson K75i, I guess, was the number? James Bond had the same one. And we were recording a ton of stuff about parkour. We were jumping on the abandoned buildings or something. So it was a lot of fun. Then my dad bought me a Nikon Coolpix, like 3.2 megapixel camera, which could record video. I guess it was 720p or even 480p. And I was recording different things like football games, soccer games for you Americans watching. Different things like this, like Ordinary Life. And I was editing in Movie Maker. So just the regular path.
Wow, what year was this?
I don't know, I guess 2005, 7 probably. So I was born in 1992. I'm 32 years old right now. So I was about 12 to 13 years old when I was getting into movie making and stuff. I also really adored a game, computer game called The Movies. I'm not sure if you heard of it, but it's like an imitation of a proper movie studio. And it had a little NLE built in, so nonlinear editing program. And you could assign different roles to mannequins so that they could perform, and then you could re-edit it. You could basically, I didn't play this game for years. So basically you could use a camera in any position, so you could choose an angle, etc. It was so fun, and it also inspired me to do more in the real world as well.
Wow.
Then I switched to my first proper DSLR, which was Canon 650D. It was on the first grade of my university, so it was in 2010 or 11, I guess. And just started filming different events in the university. I studied in the Urals Federal University. It's in the city of Yekaterinburg. I'm from Yekaterinburg. It's the most eastern city that took the World Cup in 2018. So for you to understand, it's about 1.2 million citizens. And it was a lot of fun. I just shot some dance videos, some events, some contests, etc., etc. And more and more people started to ask me to do it for the cash, basically. And that is why I started my professional videographer career. I had the 650D from Canon, or some people call it T2i, I guess, or something like that, T3i probably. Also, I had the 6D, and then I switched to Sony in 2016, I guess. And now it's Sony only. That's the journey, in a few words.
Wow. I want to give a special thank you to Cassidy Podcast Studio in Moscow, Russia, for the use of their studio for this video. It's an amazing studio. They can film and edit your podcast and deliver a high quality finished product that's ready to go. So if you're here in Moscow and you're looking for a place to host your podcast, look no further than Cassidy Podcast Studio. I'll have links down in the description for them, and they also have a YouTube channel, and I'll link that down in the description below. So at what point did you kind of transition, or did you just, do you still do wedding videography?
Yes and no. Let me explain. So, of course, as we all do, I guess, at some point in life, as a videographer or photographer, we do take some clients as a wedding filmmaker or wedding photographer. And I did shoot about 150 weddings, I guess. And I still enjoy the process. But when I changed the city, when I moved to Moscow, I didn't have that many friends in here. And all of my previous cases, they were like the word of mouth.
Right.
So they basically pass my contact to a friend or to a friend of a friend. And in Moscow, I didn't film a lot of weddings, like 10 probably, not a lot. But my wife right now, she does wedding workshops in Europe, photography wedding workshops. And
For video?
Yeah, both, stills and video. For example, in a week, we go to Italy, to Tuscany, and we're going to film right there on the villa. And she does all the organization. So she asks for the models. She just picks the right models for this particular shoot. A groom and the bride, of course, the makeup artist, flowers, floristics, venue, etc., etc. And she just gathers people from all over the world. For example, on the previous workshop, we had guys from Australia, we had guys from the US, we had guys from Canada,
Incredible.
South Africa as well,
Wow.
of course, Europe. So if your friends are curious about getting a great wedding portfolio, we can leave a link to her Instagram. It's called Peony Wedding Workshops. And probably
Let's just stop the
they'll come.
podcast right now and let's just bring Oleg's wife here and we'll just continue with that.
She could be here. She speaks pretty good English as well. So yeah, I do like filming this type of weddings right now because they are much more polished, let me say, more stylish, because she picks everything from the dress to the jewelry to the different flat lays, etc. So everything is spot on. She has a
And
great,
stylized.
yeah, she has a great taste for it, and it's more relatable to me these days, because previously my weddings were not as expensive, as fancy, etc., and I had to work in pretty difficult circumstances in terms of lighting. I didn't have a lot of freedom, and I don't have to provide the result. That is why I have more creative freedom. I can play around with the settings, I can play around with the angles, etc. So in this regard, I'm still a wedding videographer. But as a regular person who shoots weddings in Moscow, not as much. If a friend of a friend asks, I will.
Right.
If not, okay.
Yeah, I'm basically in that same situation since I moved. Obviously, my client work has diminished because I don't know as many people and I haven't really advertised either. But I totally understand what you mean, because I consider myself to be a professional wedding second shooter and an occasional primary shooter. But I love being a second shooter because all of the weight and all of the responsibility falls on the primary shooter. But it gives me the freedom to move around and look for shots that the primary photographer doesn't have time to focus on. So it's a little bit more creative. You've got a little bit more freedom. And the second thing is, and I think this is much of what you're saying about your wife's work, is marketing to a higher end bride and a higher end wedding. You'll get better venues, usually with better lighting, better audio, better DJs, better food. Believe me, these are critical things when you have a 12 or 13-hour day on your feet. So I totally get it. And I totally understand that. And kudos to her. And hopefully one day I'll have her
Yeah, maybe
sitting here in
she's
the
a
seat.
bit. She's a bit shy. She doesn't think her English is good enough to sit in front of you and make a podcast. But maybe, who knows? I'll just ask.
Yeah, maybe. But I think that'd be fascinating. It's amazing because you don't look 32.
Oh yeah, everybody says I look like younger.
You do. When I first saw, I was like, who is this kid? And why does he know so much about cameras? I mean, I'm 60 years old. I started late in the industry, and it's taken me this long to know. And it's like, because I thought you were like 20 years old. So wow. So your command of the English language is incredible. It's I would say near native level.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And it's one of the reasons that your voice and your command of the English language grabbed me in the very beginning when I started watching your videos. And not only was I impressed with your knowledge, your technical knowledge, but also your knowledge of photography, videography. It just melded. So how did NoLimitsON come to be? Did you just decide one day, I've got this piece of equipment, I want to review it because I think it's a piece of crap? Or how did that happen?
Well, speaking of the English language, first of all, I learned a ton from other reviewers because I was starting as a videographer watching YouTube in English because we didn't have a ton of content in Russian, of course, obviously. And I spent like 10 to 12 hours a day listening to English-speaking people that are tech reviewers or mentors. So about the channel, I was thinking about it for like 3 years back in 2017, I guess. But I had different things, like a lot of clients, not enough space. I wasn't sure enough if I need to make it in English or in Russian or both. So I simply had a lot of things going on. But then I moved to Moscow because of my wife. We met in France, by the way, on a wedding. And then we decided to meet in Moscow because I'm from Yekaterinburg. She's from Voronezh. It's 600 kilometers towards south from Moscow. And I thought that Moscow would be a great hub to go to Europe. We didn't know about certain things like COVID, etc., that it would be much harder to go to Europe, but still we do go. And I just thought that during the COVID times, it's the best time to start. I didn't have enough cash. We have been renting an apartment for 55,000 rubles, and I earned in 1 month 60,000. So I had 5,000 rubles. It's like $50 left.
Yeah.
And I thought that it's either now or never. And I had to make it on both languages because of the monetization and of the revenue. Because the English-speaking channels, they get a lot more revenue from the AdSense. I didn't know that AdSense would be blocked in Russia in 4 years.
Nobody did.
I still have some workarounds through the Partners program that cuts 30% off my earnings. But anyways, I thought that since I have quite decent knowledge in the language and quite decent knowledge in the tech world, and a lot of my friends been asking me, how do you set this setting? How do you film this?
right.
What lens do you use? Could you please, set my camera, change the quick menus, change the settings on the dials, etc., etc. And I was doing it for them each and every time, and I just thought, damn, let me make a video because I'll just send you the video and you can do it by yourself. That's how it all started. And the NoLimitsON is actually a little acronym because no is a no, of course. But on is my initials, Oleg Nikitin. So also on and off, like turn on, turn off. My, let me say, logo, it has like a little power button in. So NoLimitsON. This is it. So I have no limits about talking, about gear, etc. And I have my initials in it.
Wow. Very creative. Very, very creative. I'll have links down in the show notes to NoLimitsON for the best, if you ask me, some of the best gear reviews anywhere on the internet. And Fro, I'm talking to you, okay? Because this gentleman right here, he's coming for you. Because, you do awesome, awesome work.
Yeah, me too.
The Moscow Photographer channel, I created this channel as a way to reach a larger audience in the West, mainly English-speaking, who don't know anything about Russia. The only thing they know about Russia is what the media tells them. And over the last several years, or rather decades, it's been rather negative. Russia's my adopted home now. Я русский. This is my home. I'm here. And even though I'm an American, but Russia's now my home. And I love it. I love it. I've met so many incredible people. And now you. And, I hope that this is the first of maybe several, collaborations and videos that we do.
Always in.
Because I always love meeting interesting people and people who share a passion or are passionate about something. It draws you in. And when we share the same passion, it's like, you know what? We just went from friends to bros. It's just like instant. Because we both know that Fujifilm is trash. No, I'm just kidding.
No,
it's really not. It's really Fujifilm. If you would like to send me an X-T5 to review or just to play around with,
we're gonna talk.
Yeah, we can talk. I'm curious to know something about Russian culture and kind of pivot away from photography for just a moment. Many Russians don't speak English. The majority of Russians don't. It's a small minority. you do find more English speakers or multilingual speakers in Moscow, St. Pete, the larger cities. But is there a stigma among Russians who don't speak English against those who do? Do they see you as, he doesn't want to be Russian, he wants to be American? Is there any of that?
Not at all, I would say. English is basically a way to communicate, and most of the world speaks English in some kind of fashion, let me say. But we do learn English in school. Almost all the Russian schools nowadays, they do have English in the program, and I don't see any division between people who do know English and who don't. It's respectful to know English, and I do get a lot of props for my language. They say, you're a cool guy. I've never heard once from my fellow creator or just a viewer, whoever, that I'm like a, I don't know, American spy or something like this. Nothing too crazy. So probably they could say that I do use a lot of English words in my Russian speaking videos because my brain works in English at the moment. I learned videography through English. That is why in my brain it's much easier to make sentences using English words. And occasionally I can use Aputure instead of what's the Russian word for Aputure? I forgot it. Diaphragma. Diaphragma. Yes. And it always comes to my mind like this. It's easier for me to talk about gear in English. And some people get irritated about it, that I use a lot of English words in my mother tongue in Russian. But other than that, it's very polite. I don't see a ton of bad comments or rude comments or something. So all in all, we don't actually care who knows English well, knows it not so well, who doesn't know English at all.
That's good. And, I bring that up because growing up in South Texas, which is an area that is close to the Mexican border. So you have many people like me of Hispanic or Latino heritage who speak Spanish, and we speak English as well. And when I was growing up in the 70s and 80s in school, I spoke English without a Spanish accent. And it was very, very clear. And a lot of my
essays,
say Latino
essays,
my Latino friends, would think, hey, you're trying to be white. You want to be a coconut, which is brown on the outside and white on the inside.
Okay.
Right? So there was a lot of this little, I like to say, veiled racism that was involved with the language. As I grew older, now I have people say, I speak English with a Spanish accent, and I speak Spanish with an English accent. And usted habla español.
Un poquito.
Un poquito.
Estudio en mi universidad, pero prefiero inglés.
No,
I need to practice.
Yo también prefiero inglés. Está interesante. I just switched to another language, right? I just went from Spanish to a little bit of Russian and back into English. Funny story. So I met my wife in 2017 on Facebook. And in 2018, right after the World Cup, I came to Moscow for the very first time to meet her. And so I was learning some Russian words. Some Russian words I still cannot even pronounce today. Здравствуйте is like the hardest thing for me to say.
Say привет.
Привет, yeah. And I wanted to speak Russian because I wanted to show respect to the culture, to the people, to the language while I was here. So I learned a few Russian words, and I wanted to use them whenever I could. But my brain wouldn't think in Russian because my second language is Spanish. So when I would hear a foreign language, and it still happens today, sometimes it's getting better, but I will hear Russian and I will answer in Spanish because it's my second language.
yeah.
And it's like, no, not second language. Go to third language. So how many languages do you know?
Basically 3, let me say, but my Spanish isn't.
No. But you still, I could still understand what you were saying. And probably tú hablas español mejor que yo hablo русский язык. Okay, and see right there, I forgot how to say Russian language in Spanish.
La lengua rusa.
La lengua rusa, and I said it in Russian because, let me tell you, my brain, I'm studying Russian, but it's like all messed up here, man. It's like I can't get it.
You'll figure it out. It's
And,
easier
yeah.
than it seems to be.
It is easy. It's getting easier. And one day, I would love to return here and do a podcast in Russian.
Okay, we do half in Russian, half in Spanish. So I had to put in the work as well.
You got it. You got it.
Let me tell you about one thing. You said about, how do you say racism? Veil? Was it the veil word?
Veiled racism.
Okay. Let me tell you why it is not occurring in Russia and why we didn't have the same situation as you did when you speak like perfect English. Because we grew up in a very diverse society. Because we have like hundreds of nationalities inside of Russia. We have Buddhism, we have Islam, we have Christianity in terms of religion. We have tons and tons of different ethnicities, right? So that is why we are used to be in this, let me say, a pot of different cultures, and it's constantly being stirred, and that is why we don't consider ourselves as white people or themselves as some other people. For example, I studied international relations, and on my faculty, in my group, in the university, we had guys from China, Mongolia, Azerbaijan, Armenia, Georgia, Russia, of course, India, and we were all friends. Nobody gave a F 100%. And especially if we talk about the Soviet Union period, exactly the same. We had 15 different countries combined into one. And that is why we don't actually divide ourselves that he is Georgian, he is Ukrainian, he is whatever. Just a Soviet person. And I still to this day consider people from the former Soviet Union to be our like relatives, friends. I don't care who he is in terms of the passport. I consider my brothers a lot of people from different countries. I have friends in Canada, in the US, everywhere, in Australia. I don't give a damn about it.
This is amazing, and I'm glad you said it so well, because this is some of the things that were eye-opening for me when I came to Russia. Now, I'm fairly well-educated and well-grounded person, and I think that I am open-minded and don't have any biases. But propaganda is so effective that it gets into your little crevices in your brain that you don't even think are there. And when I first came to Moscow in 2018, I thought I was like, hey, I got this, no problem. I know what to expect. Don't shake hands, through the door. Take your shoes off when you come in, little things like this. Help the babushka get the eggs, from the top shelf at the supermarket, things like that. No. Russia is such a deep culture, and it's really, really beautiful. And the way you said that, of all of the ethnicities that reside here and we're one. And in America, there has always been this separatism. The line is here, you're there. The line is here, you belong there. You're not in this group, you need to be in this group. And I thought that I didn't have any of those biases. But when I came here and I saw how it really was, I was like, yeah, you do. You really, really do. And so I had to do some internal work as an American. And I'm not 100% pure American because of my Latino heritage. I've kind of adopted more of the Latino side of me as an identity because I didn't want to be known as an American
Yeah,
for many ways.
so complicated.
It's very, very complicated, very, very complicated. And I really don't want to introduce it to the podcast, but I think it's important just to note that I came with a lot of biases that I didn't know I had. Subconsciously. And now I'm conscious of them so I could release them. Just like you were saying, I have friends who embrace the Islamic faith, and they're some of the most warmest and charming people you could ever meet. And I love them dearly. They're good friends of mine. And it's difficult to express that to an American who's been so programmed to believe otherwise. And this program and this conversation is one of the reasons that I do this, so we can break down some of those barriers.
It always comes down to people.
It does.
As I always say, people are people, and you need to think of countries in terms of people, not the governments, not the politicians,
Exactly.
not the statements, etc. Because I don't have an input to this, but I have an input to this. And if I can do just a little bit to improve the image of my country, my people, etc., that's what I'm doing. I'm not trying to be the next president of Russia. Why not, of course, but still. Yeah. And to do something like huge. I do little steps. I think that a lot of people who watch my channel, they do know that I'm Russian. Some of them don't. A lot of companies, by the way, that are reaching out to me to review some gear stuff, they think that I'm American and that I live in the US because in my channel bio, I have the US. And they say, Moscow? Like, shall we send you a parcel to Moscow? I said, yes, I'm Russian. I do have the second channel, etc., etc. And it's fun, but still doing this, being Russian and still doing good things for the people on the West, because most of my viewers are from US, also from India, from Great Britain, from Germany as well. And they do get a lot of free, valuable content. I'm a shy person, but I would say it's a free, valuable content. And it helps to improve the image just a little bit, and that's enough for me. I think if everybody does just a tiny bit, it will make a big impact.
Absolutely. I agree with that 110%, because although you may not be a Sony ambassador,
I'm not.
You are an ambassador of the Russian Federation, and more importantly, of the Russian people, which the people of any nation, Trump, the government, no pun intended, but I want to crack that subliminal bias that they don't even consciously know that they have. And by having a conversation like this, we can break that barrier. And so that's my hope. And if nothing else, just go watch his channel, go watch his stuff. He's got great content, you know?
Thank you. Yeah. It's especially cool when you look at your videos, like in the beginning of the journey, like 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and I actually did a little side-by-side comparison. So my first video, when I was standing in my kitchen with pretty poor lighting, standing like this and talking like a robot, and then when I switched the studio, when I switched the lighting, when I got more fluent. Yeah, that's the correct one. And it was like 19-day difference. It was 3 years, I guess, apart, but still it was very inspiring. Can a night vision device feed you for 5 years? Let's find out. Today on our Tech Kitchen we have Sony A7S II. Let's go. What's good? My name is Oleg Nikitin. I'm a freelance videographer and a public speaking coach for 8 years now. And you're watching NoLimitsON and Tech Kitchen. What's good, guys? My name is Oleg Nikitin and you're watching NoLimitsON channel. So previously on my channel I had 2 videos, a great filmmaking kit for APS-C Sony cameras or crop sensor cameras, and also a great filmmaking kit for full frame Sony cameras like here, ZV-1. And you need to sometimes do this favor to yourself.
And then there's sometimes in those early videos that I look at them and I don't even want to see them because to me, I just don't want to remember that, that filming or whatever. But I'll go back and look at it and say, that wasn't bad. That actually turned out pretty good. I like it. I would give it a thumbs up, you know, if I saw it. And so sometimes I think as creatives, we are our harshest critic. In some ways, that's good because it keeps you learning, it keeps you on your toes. And sometimes, though, it can really, really bring you down because you sit here and you say, oh, man, I don't have this lens that I really want. I don't have this, man, I really need a monitor. By the way, I really need a monitor. So I've been watching some of your reviews.
A ton of those.
Yeah. I need a good monitor. Maybe a recorder, but monitor for sure. Do I need it? No. Do I want it? Absolutely. It's a new toy. It's something I can play with, right?
I always say that men are always kids with their toys. They simply get more expensive.
Absolutely. Oleg, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Keep looking at people. That's the main point of the whole conversation. If you care about people, not the, as I said, not the governments or the propaganda or whatever, just look at individuals. There is a lot of cool guys from Russia, both native Russians and guys like expat American, like Joe, like you, Eddie, that came here that just show how it is. And look at those guys. And the closer you look, the better they're understanding that people are still people, no matter which part of the world they're in. And that traditional values like the rationalism as is existent in here as well. So we are not doing crazy stuff. We still live our best lives, doing the best we can, still have families, friends, kids, and pretty much normal people, as all people on this planet.
The more I travel and visit other countries, the more I realize that the things that divide and separate us are very, very small compared to the things that unite us and bring us together. Because everybody wants the same thing. We all want happy, productive lives. We want family and community and love for our family and our fellow men and our friends. Everybody wants this. I don't care where you go. I don't care what country you're in. Everybody just wants the same thing. And when you see that, all of these stereotypes, all of these biases, whether subliminal or conscious, they just fade away because we're all the same.
Agreed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You bet.
Well, we did it. We did it.
To watch the full unedited version of the podcast, head over to my photography channel, Eddie Gonzalez Photographer. You'll find a link in the show notes below and at the end of this video. You gearhead photography nerds, you guys are going to love it as Oleg and I dive deep into the photography woods. Be sure to give us a like, share, and subscribe to NoLimitsON and the Moscow Photographer channel. Until next time, пока.